Hey, so I'll be reviewing your profile story this week and giving you feedback just like you did with your hard news story. So take a look. By the end of the week, you will have some feedback on your profile. And again, this will help you out for your final assignment, which hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at the assignment, see if you have any questions, maybe even have an idea of the topic that you want to do. And again, if you want to bounce that idea off of me, please message me and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing for my final assignment. What do you think? Any suggestions? What should I consider? And I'd be happy to just make sure that it's all squared away. But in any case, even if you don't contact me, you will have that feedback from your profile story, which you'll be able to apply on your final assignment. Even if you're doing a hard news story, a lot of the feedback I'm still giving you on your profile will be beneficial for you for your hard news assignment. So let's talk about what we're going to be doing this week. You've got a few more chapters to read, 11, 12, and 13, and this will actually wrap up your reading. Next week, you'll have one last quiz, and that quiz will be a recap quiz, and I'll talk about that. But these are the last new chapters that you have to read, so congratulations. You've pretty much completed the course after those readings. You have the core fundamental down for writing for the media. Those chapters are going to cover, for the first few weeks, we've been covering really print news, even though this appears on web too, but it's just the fundamentals of telling a story in a journalistic way. So hard news story, profile story, that's like your core, that's your fundamental. These chapters cover writing for broadcast, so specifically for TV. This also, one of the chapters also calls for the web, and the web, the web is very similar to the fundamentals that you're learning when you wrote your hard news story and your profile story. I mean, those stories end up going on the web now, so it's not like a completely different style of writing. But there's some things obviously that you can do on the web that you can't do in a printed story that ends up in a newspaper or a magazine. So that chapter does cover a little bit about what those special nuances, what those things are that you do on the web that are a little different from your printed story. And then the last chapter is a little different. So everything that we've been learning up to this point in those last two chapters I just talked about, the TV news and the web, is if you're a journalist, if you're working on the journalism side. The last chapter talks about public relations. And public relations, I'm not going to go over the entire chapter with you because that's what you'll be able to read the chapter for, but it's on the other end. So public relations, it's somebody who usually works for a company, a nonprofit, a university, like an actor, works for an actor, works for a celebrity, and basically they're responsible for managing that reputation of that person. And so they work with journalists, right? Because they're going to pitch ideas to journalists about covering a story, writing a story, or doing a story on their organization or product or person that they're representing. So the two work hand in hand. They're kind of like cousins. Journalism and public relations are kind of like cousins, right? There's a lot of similarities, different fields of communication, but they work with each other. They know each other well, right? So public relations, one aspect that you're doing is that pitch, pretty much, to tell a journalist that this is something that's newsworthy. You write something called a press release. And a press release is kind of like an already packaged story. It's a story done by the public relations practitioner that the journalist reviews. And usually, if it's a good journalist, what they'll do is maybe they'll take some pieces of it, maybe they'll go and get additional quotes or more background information, all the stuff you guys have learned, and rewrite the story. Sometimes, when journalists are busy, they pretty much almost take the story word for word if they think that it's factually correct, and might just change a few little things. But a press release is written, the reason why I tell you all this, and you'll learn in the chapter, is a press release is written like a journalistic story. It's written the same way that you're writing these stories right now that you've been doing, like a profile story. A lot of times public relations practitioners, public relations pros, they send profile stories to journalism outlets. So that's why I say that the writing is very similar, but there's a way that you format it. And I'll talk about that when I get to the exercise. There's a way that you format it. There's kind of like a process that you go through, and that's what that chapter is talking about. So I wanted just to make that clear because it is a little bit different from all the other stuff that we've been learning. Everything else has been on if you're in the newsroom. The chapter about public relations is if you're on the other end of it. But again, that end of it, you're working with newsrooms, and you're writing the same way that they are, and you're trying to do the same style that they are. Because you want to make that journalist's life as easy as possible. So you're pretty much writing like a story almost on your end for them. So let's talk about your homework. You, like the other weeks, have a chapter quiz here. So you've got chapters 11, 12, and 13. You've been doing really well with the quizzes, so keep that up. This is your last one of new content, and like I said, next week will be like a recap quiz, which I'll talk about next week. But this is your last quiz for all new material. And then you're going to have this press release assignment. And this is what I'm talking about when you read the public relations chapter. This will make more sense to you. But your assignment, this is your assignment. And this too is your last assignment besides your final that you've been working on, your final story. But this is your last exercise. So you should feel good after this week. All you're going to have to focus on is that final assignment. All right, so you're going to be writing a press release, which you'll learn about in the actual chapter. You'll see here that I have where it says, write a press release on the information in this document. I'm going to open up this document right here. So this is the information in this attached document. Let me rearrange my screen here for you. All right, so this is the information that's going to be that you're going to be working with, basically. So it's pre-written, but as you'll see in my instructions here, you're not just reordering the information. So in other words, what you're not doing is just going through and saying, oh, this paragraph belongs up here, this paragraph belongs up here, and then not doing anything else to it. I want you to rewrite it to a degree. And what I mean by that is you don't have to go through and change every single sentence. But based on the lessons that we've been learning in class, you might read a sentence and say, you know what, that's passive voice. I don't want to do that. I'm going to make it more active voice. Or you're going to read a sentence and you're going to say, you know what, the AP style is all wrong in that sentence. I have to fix that AP style. Or maybe you read a sentence and you say, I don't like the way that reads. I would write it a different way. Here's the way that I would write it, based on what I've been learning in this class for the most part. But this is how I think it would sound better. So you don't. I know this is going to drive you nuts because I'm not giving you concrete way of doing it. But I don't want you doing two extremes. I don't want you just not changing anything except for reordering paragraphs. So just moving things around. Do not do that. And on the other end, I don't want you having to go through and change every single sentence. Be like, all right, I'm going to need to change every word in this sentence or rearrange this sentence. I don't want you doing that either. Find that middle ground, right? Don't do the extremes. Find that middle ground. And what you're doing is you're just rearrange. You are going to have to rearrange the paragraphs. A lot of them are out of order. And then within that paragraph, maybe tweak a few words, look for AP style, make those minor fixes. In other words, a lot of ways, what you're being right here is like an editor. So this was the first draft somebody sent to you. You go, no, this is really wrong. I got to fix some of this up. And you're just kind of cleaning it up. That's what this assignment is about. If you're not sure if you're still confused by that, of course, message me. Or you can start to do it and message me and say, am I doing it right? But that's what I want you to aim for. So I already went over this. That's the information. Don't just reword it. Be rewritten using the lessons we've learned, like AP style, paragraph length. Maybe some of the paragraphs are too long, etc. Follow the instructions on page 253 and 254. So that's going to go over how to write a good press release, which is what you're doing. So that's going to, again, kind of just make sure it's almost like a checklist. Make sure you're doing everything that page 253 and 254 is telling you to do. Go through and make sure that your press release looks like that. And then on pages 254 and 255, they have like a mock news release, a mock press release, like an example there. So use that as your guide. Say, does mine look the same as this way? Is it formatted the same way? Do I have, are the letters that are supposed to be capitalized? Do I have my little mark at the end of the news release that tells me that it's done? Just basically use this as your model to make sure that your news release looks as close as possible to that. You'll see you do not need letterhead, so you don't need like a logo on top, even though the book will say that, but I'm not going to make you get a logo. So you don't have a logo, but everything else should follow the instructions exactly. Everything else, it's like a template. Everything else should be put in that template and look the same way. You're going to see you need a date for the news release. You can use this date. For contact information, use your name. You can use this as a title, communications manager. And then there's a place where it has put in a phone number and email. Just make a fake one up. just put something in there, but show me that you know where phone numbers and emails go. All right, that's your assignment. Of course, you should still be working on your final assignment, and remember that final assignment is a comprehensive assignment. So it's not something I would wait until just next week to do. You should have already been kind of getting started, last week. This is the week where a lot of the core work should be done. Where you should, if it's an event, go to the event or meet the person in interview. Do an interview this week. Start the writing. Maybe even finish the writing this week. I mean, this is the week I would think is your core week to get a lot of that work done, because you will have next week, and that really next week will be your final story is the only thing that you're going to work on. You'll have a quiz, like I said, which is just a comprehensive quiz. It's just questions that have been throughout the semester, throughout those other quizzes this semester. It's going to be in one quiz, so it's the same that you've been doing, but with questions you've already answered before. So you will have that quiz, but besides that, there's no exercise, there's no reading next week. It's just your final assignment. With that said, though, it's still a lot to write that whole assignment, quality-wise, if you're aiming for that A, to do that in 1 week. So make sure that you get in the core of that done now, so next week it's kind of fine-tuning it, a lot of editing, and then maybe getting some little pieces here and there that you still need. As always, if you have any questions, let me know, but you're doing a great job. We're really close to the end, and I'm looking forward to those profile stories and to the final assignment.